Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. It's early. I hope you had your coffee. We have a lot to talk about today. Welcome to what's new in HomeKit in iOS 11, watchOS 4, and tvOS 11. We have a ton of great features and enhancements we'd like to talk to you today about. First, we're going to be providing an overview of HomeKit as a framework. Second, we're going to be talking about some of the updates and enhancements to the HomeKit framework in iOS 11. And Praveen will be sharing some exciting news about our accessory ecosystem. The HomeKit framework allows your apps to easily set up and control your HomeKit accessories. HomeKit provides a central store for the configuration of your home, including rooms, accessories, automations, and more. This configuration is synchronized across all of your apps and devices. And HomeKit is deeply integrated in iOS, watchOS, and tvOS. You can control your accessories and scenes directly with your voice using Siri. Or, using the Home app, you can control all of your accessories from any of your devices. And with just a swipe and a tap, you can control your favorite scenes and accessories right from Control Center. And it's really never been easier for you to control your home. And with an Apple TV or iPad as your home hub, you can control your accessories from just about anywhere in the world. And we're happy to say that in addition to being a fantastic speaker, the HomePod will also be added as a home hub later this year. And with a compatible home hub, your home can be automated via time and event-based triggers. And with over 70 accessory manufacturers either bringing accessories to market or already have accessories on the market, the number of HomeKit accessories continues to grow month over month. And it's super exciting. We have a number of new features to talk about in iOS 11, and today we're going to focus on event triggers. Today, I'm happy to say that we're introducing new events, new conditions, support for end events, and recurrences. And finally, we're talking about the enhancement for mutable events. But before we dive into what's new, I'd like to do a quick overview of event triggers. Event triggers center around events. When an event fires, it activates a trigger, and you can have one or more events associated to an event trigger. We support two different types of events today. The first, when the state of an accessory changes, such as opening of a door or turning on a light. Second, we support when a device enters or leaves a geo-region. And when an event fires and the event trigger activates, it executes one or more scenes. And a scene is comprised of one or more actions, such as unlocking my door or turning on my lights. And you can gate the execution of a scene when a trigger is activated via conditions. And we support a number of different types of conditions. First, based on the current time. Second, based on the current state of an accessory. Excuse me. And last, based on the relative time to significant events, such as sunrise and sunset. Now, as an example, when we arrive home and we open our door In this case, opening the door is our event. And after dark, this is our condition. It's based on a significant event of sunset. We want to say, execute our arrive home scene. And that's an event trigger. And we have a number of enhancements and new features for event triggers. The first of which is support for date-based events via HMCalendar event. This provides an improved scheduling capability over HM timer triggers. You can now take advantage of all the features of event triggers, such as conditions, and some of the other features we're going to be talking about shortly. And we support dates based on year, month, day, and hour, minute combination. Now, as an example, let's go ahead and create an event trigger which executes at 5:30 p.m. every day. First, we're going to create our date component. And in this case, we're going to set two properties. The hour property to 17. This indicates 5 p.m. Second, we're going to set the minute property to 30. And this indicates 30 minutes after 5 p.m. We then simply create our HM calendar event, and we specify a recently created date component. Now, we've just created an event which will fire at 5:30 every day. We then simply create our HM event trigger. And we're going to give it a friendly name. In this case, we're going to call it every day at 5:30 p.m. And then we specify our collection of events. In this case, a single event, our HM calendar event. And now, in iOS 11, it's that easy to create event-based triggers based on times of the day or specific dates. We've also added support for significant time events via HM significant time event. This activates on significant events, such as sunrise and sunset. And we support a relative time offset to these significant events, both positive and negative. And this means you can schedule events to fire, say, 1 hour after sunrise. Now let's go ahead and create another event trigger. This time, we want it to fire at sunrise every day. There we go. First, we create our HM significant time event. And we're going to specify sunrise as our significant event. And we also specify our offset to be nil. Now this indicates that we want our event to fire at sunrise, not before and not after. We then simply create our HM event trigger, same as we did before, and we specify this time our sunrise event as the single firing event. We've also added a convenience condition to iOS 11 to allow you to easily create a condition which is between two significant events. And note that because these take significant events, they support a relative time offset. So for instance, I can create a condition which gates the execution of my scene from, say, 1 hour after sunset to 1 hour before sunrise. This is available on HM event trigger via predicate for evaluating trigger occurring between significant events. In iOS 11, we've also added support for creating an event which executes when a characteristic value crosses a threshold value. Now, for example, we could execute when the temperature rises above 76 degrees in our home. We could also execute when the temperature drops below 68 degrees in our home. And finally, we could execute when the temperature is between 68 and, say, 76 degrees in our home. Now let's go ahead and build an example. We want to create an event trigger which executes when the temperature in our home rises above 76 degrees. To do this, we first create an HM number range. Now note, HM number range is what specifies our range between a minimum and maximum value. And we've provided two convenience initializers for you to create a range with a minimum or a maximum value only. In this case, we're providing the minimum value to be 76. And our maximum value in this case is an arbitrary large number. Let's say it's positive infinity. We then create our HM characteristic threshold range event. And we specify our target characteristic. In this case, it's a temperature characteristic, which could be a temperature sensor, or it could be a thermostat. We then simply provide our threshold range, which was our recently created range of 76 degrees. We then, as we've done before, create our HM event trigger, and this time, we specify our single firing event, which is our characteristic threshold range event. There we go. Now, the state of our homes are often tied to whether or not users are in or out of the home. For instance, I don't like to run my air conditioning or have lights on in my home when no one is home. I'm happy to say that in iOS 11, this is now supported via HM Presence Event. It's super cool. You're going to love it. And we support a number of different types of events. Excuse me. There we go. First, when the current user, that's the device that we're talking about, arrives home. On the other hand, we can also support when the current user leaves home. Now these two replace, or don't replace, but they augment HM location events. But instead of tracking a single device, they now track a user. And we've also added support for multiple users of the home. In fact, all users of the home. For instance, we support when the last user leaves home. Now note, this indicates that your home is now unoccupied. It's a good time to do things such as turn off the lights, turn down the air conditioning, even lock the doors. And finally, of course, we support when the first user arrives home. And this indicates that your home is now occupied. And in this case, it may be good for you to do things like turn down the air conditioning, turn on some lights, unlock the doors. Now let's go ahead and build this last example, where we create an event trigger, which executes when the first user arrives home. First, we create our HM presence event. And we're going to specify our presence type to be any user at home. Now this indicates that we want our event to fire when the first user arrives home. We then, just as we've done before, create an HM event trigger, and we specify our single firing event in this case, which is our presence event. And you probably know what I'm going to say, but it really is that easy in iOS 11 to create user presence-based automations. And it's super cool, and we're super excited for you to try it out and provide some enhanced features to your clients, or your app users, excuse me. Now, we didn't stop there. We've also added support for user presence conditions. Now, for example, let's say that normally we want to execute our good morning scene when we wake up or when the sun rises. But it doesn't make sense for us to execute this if no one's home. And in iOS 11, you can now gate the execution of scenes based on user presence via user presence conditions. This is available on HM event trigger via predicate for evaluating trigger with presence. And note that it takes a presence event. Now, let's go ahead and add a presence condition to our previous sunrise event trigger and take a look at what it looks like. First, we're going to create our significant time event, which is our sunrise event, specifying no offset, same as we did before. we then create our HM presence event. Again, same as we did before, specifying any user at home. We then create our condition via HM event trigger, predicate for evaluating trigger with presence, and we specify our presence event. And then we create our HM event trigger. Now this time, we're going to specify our condition as the predicate for the event trigger. And now we have just created an event trigger which will fire every day at sunrise, but will only execute the associated scenes when there is a user at home. If you're like me, we often want to execute a trigger, but only temporarily. For instance, when I open my patio door at night, I want my patio light to turn on. But after, say, 10 minutes, I want my patio light to turn off automatically. And this is now possible in iOS 11 via end events. End events are available on HM Event Trigger, and they return a collection of HM events. And you can update the existing events or end events for an event trigger via update end events with completion handler. Now, we've added a new event for end events, HM duration event. And this allows you to specify a time interval from the trigger's execution time, at which point to end the event. Now, on a similar note, we often want a trigger to execute only on certain days of the week. And this is now possible via recurrences. Recurrences are available on HM Event Trigger, and they return an optional collection of date components which specify the days of the week for which the trigger is active. And you can update an existing event trigger with new recurrences via update recurrences with completion handler. Now, as an example, I like to get up just a little later on the weekends, as I'm sure many of you do. And so I don't want my good morning scene to automatically execute an hour after sunrise. Instead, I'd like to use Siri to go ahead and say, good morning. So let's go ahead and gate our previous sunrise event trigger to only execute during the week, Monday through Friday. To do this, we create our HM significant time event, same as we did before. Then, we create our collection of date components. We're going to call these weekdays. Then, for each day of the week, Monday through Friday, we create a new date component. And we specify the weekday property to be the current day of the week. And we simply add this to our weekdays collection. And then, when we create our HM event trigger, we specify our collection of recurrences, which are date components, as the recurrences are of our event trigger. And this allows us to restrict the execution of event triggers based on the day of the week. But furthermore, we also sometimes want to create an event trigger which only executes once and then auto-disables itself. This is now possible via execute once. Now, as an example, you may want to create an event trigger that executes tomorrow at, say, sunset, but you don't want it to repeat. It's a great feature, and we're excited for you to try it out. This is available on HM Event Trigger via the execute once property, and you can update an existing or new event trigger to only execute one time via update execute once with completion handler. Now last, We've heard your feedback, and we understand how difficult it currently is to update existing events on an event trigger. Let's take an example. If you were building an app and updating a single event, you first had to copy the properties of that event in your application. Then, you had to allow the user to modify that event. Once the user completed their changes, you had to create a brand new HM event with the new properties. Then, you had to remove the existing event via remove event with completion handler, and then add the new event via add event with completion handler. And this was a number of steps to update just one single event. And so in iOS 11, we've made it simpler via a single method, update events with completion handler. Now this takes a collection of HM events, which represent the new events for an event trigger. And we've also added support for all defined HM events for mutable copies. So what does this mean? You can now simply take a mutable copy of an existing event, make any changes the user has requested, and then commit those changes via update once with completion handler. Let's go ahead and see an example of updating our previous sunrise event trigger to execute 30 minutes after sunrise. First, we get our existing HM event. This will return an object of type HM significant time event. We then simply create a mutable copy, which will return an object of type HM mutable significant time event. We can then update the offset of our sunrise event by creating a new date component. We specify the minute property to 30 to indicate 30 minutes after the significant event, and then simply update the offset of our mutable sunrise event to our new date component. Now note, we haven't actually changed our event trigger yet. It will still execute at sunrise. To move our event trigger to execute 30 minutes after sunrise, we simply need to call update events with completion handler, providing a collection of new events. In this case, we simply pass our single mutable sunrise event. And now, in iOS 11, it's that easy for your apps to update existing events on an HM event trigger. And we've covered a ton of new topics and enhancements to HM event triggers. First, we've added support for new events, supporting dates, significant events, characteristic threshold range, and user presence. We've added new conditions, supporting significant time ranges and user presence. We've added support, for end events, which allow you to specify temporary event triggers, which can auto-deactivate after a specified amount of time. And we've added support for recurrences, which allow you to specify when your event trigger will be active. And finally, we've added support for mutable events for all defined event types, which makes it easier for your applications in iOS 11 to update existing HM event triggers. And now, I'd like to hand it off to Praveen to give you some exciting updates about our accessory ecosystem. Praveen?
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. My name is Praveen Chegondi, and I'm here to share with you new protocol features and enhancements that are in iOS 11. I have a few exciting topics to talk about today. I'm going to be sharing some great news about what we are doing with the HomeKit accessory protocol specification. I'm also going to be talking about enhancement to the HomeKit accessory protocol. Support of new accessory categories in iOS 11. Addition to the authentication process for HomeKit accessories. And finally, we'll be rounding up with improvements to the self-certification process for our MFI licensees. Let's start off with a quick overview of the HomeKit Accessory Protocol specification. The HomeKit Accessory Protocol specification describes how a controller, which is an Apple device, communicates with an accessory along with the security requirements. All sessions between Apple devices and accessories over HomeKit are end-to-end encrypted and mutually authenticated. The specification provides implementation details for both IP and Bluetooth LE-based accessories. And you can also get details on how to describe each of the accessory categories that are supported in HomeKit, such as a light bulb, fan, thermostat, and many more. For a complete overview of the HomeKit Accessory Protocol, you can refer to the 2014 session, Designing Accessories for iOS and OS X. Until now, the specification was available to MFI licensees whose accessories carry the logo, works with Apple HomeKit after completing self-certification. Starting today, we are also making a version of the HomeKit Accessory Protocol specification available to anyone with a developer license. So, if you are a student, developer, or even a hobbyist and want to learn about HomeKit protocol and want to create accessories for your personal use, you can now do that. The HomeKit developer page has been updated with the specification, and also you'll find other useful information, such as frequently asked questions and guidelines to building your HomeKit apps. Because the specification has Apple's proprietary information, you will need to agree to a click-through license before downloading it. And with all this information, we are looking forward to seeing what new ideas you're going to come up with. And let's say you come up with a really cool prototype and now want to develop a HomeKit accessory for commercial sale. You need to join the Apple's MFI program. You need to join the Apple's MFI program and go through self-certification before you can begin your manufacturing or sale of your accessories. And this is really exciting. And I'd recommend that you check the developer page often for the latest updates as we continue to introduce new features and enhancements to the specification. Talking about enhancements, in iOS 11, we made some great enhancements to the HomeKit Accessory Protocol. Now, let's see how a user with iOS 10 sets up a HomeKit accessory, such as a light bulb. The user powers on the accessory by putting the light bulb in the socket, chooses the accessory from the Add Accessory option in the Home, and scans the 8-digit setup code. In 3 easy steps, the user is able to set up a HomeKit accessory. This is simple and great. A couple of things to note in this process. The accessory must be powered on for it to show up. Secondly, the setup code is used for the initial HomeKit pairing only, and this is to ensure that you and only you are setting up the accessory. For many accessories that are installed in hard-to-reach places, such as a light bulb, or have setup codes printed on the back of the product, it makes it difficult to scan the setup code when it's powered on. Or even choosing an accessory when you're setting up multiple accessories of the same model becomes challenging. In iOS 11, we are introducing enhanced setup process to further simplify accessory setup. With the enhanced setup, users can now scan the setup code and then power on the accessory. To achieve this, we are enhancing the setup payload to include setup ID in addition to the setup code. iOS 11 uses the setup ID to start the pairing process with the accessory when the setup code is scanned, and matches to the accessory when it's powered on. It's that simple. To deliver the enhanced setup code, we are now supporting scanning of QR codes for setting up HomeKit accessories. The QR code is standards-based and can be as small as 10 by 10 millimeters. That's pretty small. This will make the small form factor of the QR code will help a lot of manufacturers to put the QR code on the smaller accessories. And this is really great. But we didn't stop there. We took one step further. And in addition to supporting QR code, we also added support for NFC tags. And we are really excited about this. With NFC tags that are programmed with the enhanced setup code, we can now deliver even more seamless user experience for setting up accessories. The user needs to just tap to pair, and it's that simple, and it's fantastic. The whole experience in setting up accessories in iOS 11 with the support of QR code or NFC tag for HomeKit accessories is just fantastic. Now, let's talk about Bluetooth. Over the last few years, we have seen an influx of Bluetooth LE HomeKit accessories. This is because Bluetooth LE accessories offer a lot of advantages. They are small, they are extremely low power, and many are battery operated, such as a contact sensor, motion sensor, and many more. And users use these to trigger events when a certain action takes place. And this is really great. Now, let's see how Bluetooth notifications work in iOS 10. In iOS 10, when an accessory state changes, it triggers a state change notification. The Home Hub, Apple TV in this case, picks up the state change and then establishes a secure communication with the accessory to determine what state has changed, and then triggers the automation. The whole process results in a few seconds of latency for the automation to be executed. In iOS 11, we changed the mechanism completely to significantly reduce latency. And we are doing this by what we call secure broadcast sessions to send the notification. Here, the iOS controller configures the accessory with an encryption key and the interested characteristics that can be included in the secure broadcast notifications. Now, when a characteristic changes, the accessory encrypts the state change and then sends a notification to the Home Hub, which will then immediately execute the automation. With this enhancement, we have seen with a number of accessories where the latency has gone from a few seconds to under a second for the events to be triggered. And the best part about this enhancement is that you just need to upgrade to iOS 11 and get new firmware for your accessories to enjoy faster triggers. You don't need to buy new products. And with the new event triggers Matt talked about earlier, and with secure broadcast notifications for Bluetooth LE accessories, it's just incredible how home automation is going to be defined now. Coming to accessory categories. HomeKit supports a wide range of accessory types, from sensors to IP cameras, and many more. Every year, we continue to add support of new accessory categories. This year, in iOS 11, we are now adding support for sprinklers and faucets. With the support of sprinklers in HomeKit, users can now control watering their garden by Siri. Somewhat on a similar accessory category type, which is water-related, let's talk about faucets. For many users, it is a daily ritual to turn on the shower, let the water run, and wait for the water to turn to the right temperature before you get into shower. Now, while having your morning cup of coffee, you can let Siri know it's bath time. And by the time you finish a cup of coffee, the water temperature is just right to your desired setting. And this can be achieved with the faucets accessory category. That's pretty neat. Let's talk about authentication now. At Apple, security and quality is of utmost importance to us. Our customers trust that their accessories are tested thoroughly by MFI licensees and audited by Apple. To ensure accessories are trusted and self-certified, we have adopted hardware-based authentication. Starting with iOS 11, we are now introducing an alternate method to authenticate HomeKit accessories. Now, accessories can be authenticated by software. This provides a great option to enable HomeKit on shipping accessories that can be upgraded to HomeKit. For our MFI licensees, we will be sharing more information about the implementation later. Continuing on the topic of accessory quality, we now have new and improved process and tools to help MFI licensees accelerate the launch of HomeKit accessories. We now have automated tools to test your accessory and continue to automate more and more test cases. And we urge all MFI licensees to always get the latest tools before you begin your testing. Also, we are glad to announce that we now have 2 Apple-authorized third-party labs here in the United States, and authorizing more third-party labs in China and UK next month. And this should help a lot of MFI licensees to launch their accessories sooner. To recap this session, this year we introduced many compelling and useful HomeKit features. Matt talked about the great enhancements to event triggers and introduced new APIs you can adopt in your apps to redefine home automation. I shared news about HomeKit accessory protocol specifications being made available to all developers. An enhanced accessory setup process makes it even better than what it was before. And the introduction of secure broadcast notifications for Bluetooth LE accessories will make the event triggers go faster. And introduce new accessory categories, sprinklers, and faucets. And finally, we provided an update on automation tools for self-certification and authorizing third-party labs around the world to accelerate the launch of HomeKit accessories. We at Apple are really excited about all these features, and we can't wait to see what you are going to do with them. A couple of important things before we close this session. We have 2 HomeKit labs for you this week, where you can interact with a number of HomeKit engineers and who will be happy to answer any questions you might have with regards to your apps and/or accessories. We will also be demoing some of the new features and enhancements that we just talked about that are introduced in iOS 11. The first lab is right after this session in Technology Lab J. Thank you very much for coming. and enjoy the rest of your conference. See you in the lab.